Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. The evening was meant to be tranquil, a simple dinner and maybe a movie to end the day. As I walked through the front door, the scent of garlic and rosemary filled the air, a reminder of Lydia's love for cooking. She was at the stove, stirring a pot of something that smelled delicious. I could see the soft glow of the kitchen lights reflecting off her hair, and for a moment, everything felt normal. "Hey, John," she said, her voice carrying a lightness that was unusual. "I was just finishing up dinner. How was your day?" "It was fine," I replied, hanging up my coat. I took a deep breath, savoring the aroma of her cooking. "It smells great in here." Lydia gave me a warm smile, but I noticed a hint of tension in her eyes. After a few moments of small talk, she turned off the stove and gestured for us to sit at the table. The table was set neatly, and I could see she had made an effort to create a pleasant atmosphere. As we began to eat, Lydia's demeanor shifted. She was quieter than usual, and there was a palpable tension in the air. After a few bites, she put her fork down and looked at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen before. "John, there's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice steady but hesitant. I put my fork down as well, sensing that this was more than just a casual conversation. "What is it, Lydia?" She took a deep breath and seemed to brace herself. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about our relationship and what love means. And I've come to a conclusion that's hard for me to say out loud." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Go on," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I love you," Lydia said, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that was almost painful. "But I don't think monogamy is natural for us as humans. Society has these rigid expectations about love, and I've realized that I want to explore other relationships. I want to spend tonight out, to see what that's like." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My mind raced, trying to process the betrayal and confusion swirling inside me. "You want to be with other men?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Yes," she replied, her voice unwavering. "I need to understand if this is truly what I want. I know it's not what you might expect, but it's important for me." I looked at her, trying to find any hint of jest or hesitation, but her expression was earnest. "And you're telling me this now, just before you go out?" Lydia nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of determination and fear. "Yes. I know it's sudden, but this is something I need to do. I hope you can understand." My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to remain composed. "Lydia, this is a lot to take in. I can't just accept this as if it's nothing. I need to understand why you're doing this now, and what it means for us." "It's not about hurting you," Lydia said quickly. "It's about finding out what's true for me, and I hope you can support me in this." I sat back, trying to gather my thoughts. "I don't know if I can support this, Lydia. This isn't what I signed up for." She looked at me, her face a mixture of desperation and regret. "Please, John. Just give me this chance. I promise I still love you, and this doesn't change that." I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the whirlwind of emotions. "I need some time to think about this. I can't just accept it blindly." The room fell into a heavy silence as Lydia's words sank in. The evening that had started with promise had turned into something entirely different, and I was left grappling with the sudden and painful shift in our relationship. The minutes ticked by slowly as Lydia and I sat at the dining table. I could see her growing more anxious, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. I took a deep breath, determined to keep my emotions in check despite the storm raging inside me. "John," Lydia said, her voice quivering slightly, "I know this is difficult. I'm just asking for a chance to explore something I feel is important. Why are you being so rigid about this?" I looked at her, struggling to stay calm. "Lydia, this isn't about being rigid. It's about trust and what we've built together. I'd rather not have you go through with this if it means jeopardizing what we have." She sighed, frustration evident on her face. "But you don't understand. This isn't about hurting you. It's about understanding myself better. You've always said you want me to be happy. Isn't this part of that? I'd rather not make this more complicated than it has to be, I said, trying to maintain my composure. If we start down this path, it could change everything between us. Lydia's face was a mix of desperation and defiance. I feel like you're not even trying to understand my perspective. Why are you so unwilling to let me explore this? I'd rather not get into a heated argument, I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I'm trying to approach this calmly, and I think it's better if we don't escalate the situation. Her eyes narrowed, and she stood up, pacing the room. So what do you suggest we do? Just pretend this conversation never happened? No, I said firmly, I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying I need time to process this. I'd rather not make any decisions right now that could lead to more hurt. Lydia stopped pacing and looked at me, her shoulders slumped. John, this isn't easy for me either. I'm trying to find something meaningful, and I thought you'd understand. I understand that you're searching for something, I said, my voice calm but resolute. But I'd rather not rush into anything that could cause more damage to our relationship. She seemed to realize that I wasn't going to budge on this. So, what happens now? I'm going to go out tonight, and what about us? I'd rather not focus on what's to come right now, I said, my tone measured. Let's take some time apart and see where things stand after a bit of distance. Lydia's frustration was palpable, but she could see that I was unwavering. Fine, she said, her voice tight. I'll go. But don't think this is the end of it. As she gathered her things and headed towards the door, I felt a deep sense of resignation. The pain of her decision was heavy, but I knew that reacting with anger would only make things worse. I watched her leave, the silence of the house now feeling like a stark reminder of the profound shift in our lives. The weekend stretched endlessly. Every day felt like a heavy burden as I tried to keep myself occupied, but Lydia's absence was a constant weight on my mind. I busied myself with tasks around the house, trying to ignore the growing sense of emptiness. It was late Sunday afternoon when Lydia finally returned, her usual grace replaced by a weary, almost defeated demeanor. I was in the living room, half-heartedly flipping through a book when I heard the front door open. My heart skipped a beat, and I stood up, my emotions a mix of hope and apprehension. Lydia walked in slowly, her face pale and her eyes rimmed with red. She carried a small bag, her movements lacking their usual confidence. John, she said, her voice soft and hesitant. Can we talk? I nodded, trying to suppress the anticipation and unease I felt. Sure. Let's sit in the living room. We both took seats on opposite ends of the couch. Lydia set her bag down and took a deep breath. Her eyes were filled with a mix of regret and vulnerability. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of what had transpired hanging heavily between us. I've been thinking a lot, Lydia began, her voice trembling slightly. This weekend didn't turn out the way I'd hoped. I went out, met some people, and tried to find what I was looking for. But instead of clarity, I only found disappointment. I looked at her, my heart aching at the sight of her distress. And what did you discover? I realized that what I was searching for wasn't out there, she said, her voice breaking. I was trying to escape something within myself, and all I ended up with was a deep sense of regret. I've missed you terribly, John. I want to come back, to make things right. Her eyes filled with tears as she reached out to take my hand. I pulled back slightly, trying to process her words. Lydia, this is a lot to take in. You hurt me deeply, and I'm still struggling with what happened. I know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I understand that I've caused you a lot of pain. But I'm asking you for another chance. I'm asking you to believe that I can change, that I've learned from this. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. It's not just about what you've learned. It's about what we've lost. I'm not sure if I can just pick up where we left off. Lydia's face fell, her hope seemingly dimming. Please, John. I'm not asking for everything to go back to the way it was. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be the partner you need. I looked at her, torn between the desire to believe her and the fear of being hurt again. I need time to think about this, Lydia. I can't promise anything right now. Lydia nodded, her shoulders slumping in resignation. I understand. I'll give you the space you need. But please know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. As she stood up, preparing to leave, I felt a pang of sorrow. Lydia, I appreciate your honesty. Let's take this one step at a time. She gave me a final, pained smile before heading towards the door. The quiet of the house enveloped me once again, but now it was tinged with a sense of unresolved emotions. Lydia's return had brought a flood of feelings to the surface, and I knew that the road to reconciliation, if it was even possible, would be a long and uncertain one. Weeks passed since Lydia's return, and the distance between us seemed to widen with each day. Her attempts to bridge the emotional gap were sincere but ultimately ineffective. Despite her efforts, I found it increasingly difficult to reconnect with the person who had once been my partner. One evening, Lydia approached me as I was preparing dinner. She had a look of determination in her eyes, and I could tell she had something important to say. "John, I've been trying so hard to make things work," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "I feel like we're at an impasse, and I don't know what else to do." I set down the knife and turned to face her. "I appreciate everything you've done, Lydia. But the emotional distance between us is significant. I'm struggling to move past what happened." "I understand that," she said, her voice cracking. "But I'm not giving up. I want to work on this, to make our relationship better. Isn't that worth trying for?" I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. "I'm not sure what more we can do. We've tried talking, and we've both made efforts, but the trust is still fractured." Lydia's face fell, and she took a step closer to me. "Is there any way we can salvage this? I'm willing to do whatever it takes." I shook my head, my heart heavy. "I don't know, Lydia. I need to be honest with you, I'm finding it difficult to fully invest in this relationship again." The look of hurt in her eyes was palpable. "So what does that mean for us? Are we just going to keep going in circles?" "I don't want to keep hurting each other," I said, trying to be as gentle as possible. "Maybe it's best if we take a step back and reevaluate things." The conversation left us both feeling drained, and Lydia's attempts to mend the relationship continued but with diminishing returns. The emotional distance only seemed to grow. A few days later, Lydia sat me down again, her expression weary. "John, I've been thinking a lot. Maybe you're right. Maybe we need to take a break from each other. It's clear that we're not on the same page." I looked at her, my own weariness mirrored in her face. "If you think that's what's best, I agree. It's been hard for both of us." "I'm going to move out," Lydia said quietly. "I found a place nearby. I need to get some space and figure out what I want, just as you do." "I think that's a good idea," I said, nodding. "It might give us both the clarity we need." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry for everything, John. I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I said softly. "I'm sorry too. I wish things could have been different." Lydia packed her belongings over the next few days. As she prepared to leave, the house felt colder and emptier. The finality of her departure was a painful realization that our relationship had fundamentally changed. As she walked out the door with the last of her things, I felt a profound sense of loss. The emotional distance that had grown between us had ultimately driven us apart. Lydia's move was a clear indication that we were both trying to find our way forward, but the relationship we had shared was irrevocably altered. The house, now silent, echoed with the memories of what once was, a poignant reminder of the relationship that had unraveled despite our best efforts.